nobody will be able to hear us behind the scenes, but at least the music is rolling out there, and they'll see us and I'll chat. That's just a moment, and I'll start right in. I was on Steph's show this morning talking about the launch, so up at it for a while. What's up, chat room? Hit the like as you come in the door. Helps us out immensely. Lets people know we're here. Hashtag Hope Blue. Absolutely. What's for breakfast? Biden. What's for lunch? Biden. What's for dinner? Biden. That's what we're talking about. All right. Annie, thank you for subscribing right out of the gate. Major is first up, and Tara will be joining us in capsule number 2 in the second hour. And then a lot to talk about, certainly. I don't know. I talked about this on Friday, but I don't know if you follow this. We can talk about it on the air once we get it. But did you hear about Elaine Chao's sister, Angela Chao? She died on Mitch McConnell's ranch in Texas like 10 days ago, 15 days ago, and they just made it a criminal matter on Thursday. Yeah, allegedly it was a suicide at first and all this stuff, and now they're saying they're treating it as a criminal matter. She was the head of that shipping company that had cocaine on it that led to him being called the cocaine bitch. Oh yeah. That's going to leave a mark. Yeah.
Well, but obviously he's no longer.
Well, the timing of that is suspect, I would say, as well.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I think so.
Because that's hinky. That's some hinky shit. Yeah. The timing of all of it is suspect, I would say.
Yeah, I'm always excited to see people like Mitch getting out of politics.
Right.
That's their legacy. That's their legacy. And they need to be treated accordingly.
Yeah, it's fascinating to me that you got somebody who mainly maintained power because Kentucky has no purpose-driven power. None of the power they have is based on the worth of the state. What's the big thing that Kentucky brings to the economy, right? That's, I can't think of it.
Horse racing?
Right, well, yeah, of course, which is what? Arabs, largely. That is like the biggest Saudi input in the United States besides, like, money laundering, I would argue. Is specifically that. Like, we're almost ready to start, ready to hit that, like, that for a long time they've had a very powerful kind of lobby, right? Of like Arab money and Arab power around Kentucky and the horse farms and all that kind of stuff. But we've known it forever when I grew up there. That was one of the oddest things about this southern state that had this peculiar aspect.
You don't like people from Arabic nations, but unless they have a lot of land.
Yeah, right. Unless they own a horse farm or a big chunk of Louisville or Lexington, right? And then it's like, oh, it's good for business, it's good for everything. And it's it's that Trump racism. And again, it would dry up the second nobody, if the money stopped coming in, then they're going to be, then they're like, oh, these Arabs again. They turn on them in a second because it's all, again, it's that sort of transactional relationship that Trump has with everyone. Yeah.
They only like you and respect you when you bring them something.
Right. Well, that's Trump saying that about the Argentinian president, Milei, who he called Argentina. he said his name was Argentina, great guy. He is a good person. I like him because because he likes me. That was basically his take, which is so Trump. But I mean, it's that entire the concept of like the transactional relationship that is Trump world. Okay, since we're online, anyways, I'm going to jump over and get us in there. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. And here we go. And I'll transition this over. Ladies and gentlemen, Major Ojeda joining us this morning. How are you, sir?
Doing great, man.
Fantastic. It was a great morning. We launched the Sexy Liberal Comedy Tour officially today. We're being carried. Please tell me they can. Yeah, everybody can hear us. We're good. Okay. And which is great, that we could officially announce those dates instead of having just Stephanie Miller leaking the dates out accidentally, because we found the source of the leak and it was Stephanie herself. And it's the irony is palpable that we weren't supposed to talk about these dates until they came out, and then bing, here they are. In the meantime, though, if I may, the Major's joining us, and there's been a lot of movement on the Ukraine side, right? Lately, the White House has found a way to work around with the Pentagon ways of funding and finding stuff for the Ukrainian army, besides waiting for Mike Johnson and them to get off their Putin-loving ass and fix this, and then working with our European partners to do the exact same thing. So it was, interestingly enough, with all this talk about, oh my God, they're running out of ammunition, a particularly deadly month for Russians. Probably their worst so far.
Yeah.
Yeah. Your take,
Yeah,
your feeling.
I haven't. Every single day I get a screenshot from the Kyiv Independent with the losses of the day, and
Right.
it's just continuing to grow. Where literally, I would say 3 out of every 4 days they're losing a minimum of 1,000 people a day.
Yeah.
And like I said, they lost 1,160 troops yesterday.
Yeah.
They lost, and then of course, due to the time, it's already nighttime over there in Europe, and they lost 1,150 troops today. They're losing. I mean, they're hemorrhaging tanks, armored personnel carriers, artillery systems. They lost something like 52 artillery systems yesterday, and that's the gun, the vehicle that pulls the gun, and the crew that operates it.
Right.
I mean, we're looking at significant loss of life, and it just continues to go in that direction. And Vladimir Putin controls the news media. He is basically saying that they've only lost like 20,000 troops. They're at 419,000 dead. We just crossed into the 400,000 mark, like literally a week and a half ago.
Dude, I was talking about this with Phil, like in December, I want to say, about the marker of crossing the 400,000 threshold. And it's weird to talk about it in the same time frame that we talked about, like, I remember in Iraq when we were closing in on 2,500, that you remember that distinctly. There was a lot of talk. Yes. And it affected the politics of it, how long we could stay, what we could do, how much actual fighting we could do. Like it controlled that circumstance. 2,500.
Yeah, and this is one of those things, this in the United States of America, we look at something like that and we're like, there's no way. But the thing about it is a dictatorship controls the news media. The dictatorship tells you what they want you to know. And that's one of the reasons why you still have people in Russia in some sections that are like, yeah, we're defending Russia. But make no mistake about it, somebody, and I know we always revert to Donald Trump and all that bullshit.
Yeah.
But the truth is make no mistake about it, Donald Trump would be the same way. Dictators will basically use anything at their disposal to protect them and their way of life. Right. And they don't care if they send your loved ones in a human wave towards their enemies. They don't care. Right. And I'm telling you, that's what this is looking like. I mean, I'm waiting to start getting, stories out of Ukraine of just Russian human waves, because, good Lord, we're talking 1,000, 1,100, 1,200 people every single day, and it's getting worse.
Yeah. I find it astounding that I mean, there have been uprisings in China lately. There have been a lot of like that, and they're really kept down. You don't get to hear about them a lot. When they happen in Russia, it's interesting because there's enough sneaky people and very little use of VPNs over there. They don't have the lockdown on the internet that the Chinese do, so they can't corral a message as quickly. And that's why we know about drones and other things and subversives attacking, like fuel plants and places like that in Russia. We know about that because of that very thing. And so we also knew about the Navalny marches, where people were walking around and laying roses and all that kind of stuff. Is it there are and there have been minor uprisings, little, dust ups with the cops and that kind of stuff in Russia throughout, usually around conscription. But in China right now, there's been enormous ones. And there's like, the Texas wildfire that's burning right now is one of the biggest it's the biggest in the state's history, might be one of the biggest in the country's history. There are somewhere in the order of 6 to 8 fires of equal size burning in China right now.
Wow.
Yeah. And you're not going to hear that on the news. I realized today, and this is kind of related to the, like how the news treats Russia versus how the news treats the United States. I swear to God, yeah, we have not heard we're not going to hear any of the stuff about China in that regard. But I think the biggest boosters right now of the CCP of China right now are Fox News, Newsmax, and the Freedom Caucus.
Absolutely.
Like nobody
absolutely.
talks up the strength and intelligence of the CCP and the power of China and all that stuff more than those folks. Everybody else is like, what the fuck are you talking about? You read any of the newspapers and you're like, what? But these guys are like, no, they own Joe Biden. We can't fight them off. They've got the biggest military. They're going to kick our ass. Like they're going to eat our lunch and then serve it and kick it out of our belly and then eat it again. Every day they seem to be selling. China does, and they're doing the same thing with Russia. They will do the same thing. Like you listen to those same people. Russia's doing amazing. They're better than us. They're stronger than us. They're faster than us. And goddamn people.
Never. They've never been better. They've never been faster.
Nope.
And now we know that their military, that we literally thought was the toughest military in the world, is nothing more than a paper tiger. They can't fight. They don't know how to basically push supplies across the battlefield. There are so many things that we have seen that Russia does that's literally ancient. I mean, the main mode of transportation is by rail. So wow, let that sink in. But here's another thing too: is it's the double standard. The Fox News will never ever allow anybody on the Democratic side to get a pass.
Yeah,
and then Donald Trump comes in and does just as much bad as they were saying somebody else was doing, and then even more, and they give him a pass. But I saw something, and I think that because you said that, this brought this up. Former Air National Guardsman Jack Teixeira, accused of leaking a trove of classified documents and posting them online, has been sentenced to prison for 16 years. And once again, I wrote, this is what's supposed to happen when someone shares our secrets.
Yeah.
But once again,
that's the Discord guy. Yeah.
This is what Donald Trump should get. Because Donald Trump, I mean, and that's the thing is that here's it. Now look, does this young kid deserve to go to prison? Damn straight he does. Because we have a lot of secrets that we cannot let out. And I got it. There's some things that if we let out, people would be quite angered at us. But there's a lot of things that we can't let out because of technology and all kinds of other stuff. But at the end of the day, Donald Trump is by far the most dangerous man in the history of our country when it comes to classified documents.
Yeah.
We have no idea. And it would not surprise me if we found out in the next week that he sold documents. And if you think that Donald Trump wouldn't sell documents, then you've not been paying attention or you're not very smart. And I think it's about time to start calling these people for what they are. Look, you're still a supporter of Donald Trump. Look, you are just not a smart person. That's it.
Yeah. Or you're the darkness inside you, the racism or total disregard for a certain group of people, your fear, coward also works, but a lot of these folks are so angry towards groups of people that have almost nothing to do with them. And that's enough. Again, I've always said that he serves the pit bull purpose. They think of him this way. Is there a chance he could shake the baby Like if he gets into the kid's room or the kid starts fucking with him, will he shake the child and kill it? Yeah, but I'm more scared of my neighbors, so therefore I want him in the yard. I want this dog, and that's nothing on pit bulls. It's this is the I'm talking about the public perception, and in this particular case, they only like him because they see him as the pit bull against the threat that they perceive. And the weird part is that the threat seems to be in a lot of cases another group of pit bulls that he wants to be a pack of. The weirdest part about him is this whole the cues. We heard all about this shit about him. He's going to stop the baby screwing cabal, right? The baby eating cabal that it's running everything. And meanwhile, he's been friends with Jeffrey Epstein for 2 friggin' decades. He only stopped because the guy outbid him on a piece of property or drove the price up. Trump ultimately got that piece of property, but he had to pay like 10 million more to get it, and he was mad at Epstein for driving the price up. That's why they split as friends. Wasn't because he was having sex with the high school cheerleaders in the area. Jesus Christ, he invited, how many times has Matt Gaetz been to Mar-a-Lago? Clearly that's not a problem.
There is, I mean, literally, there's nobody out there that has more photographs with Jeffrey Epstein than Donald friggin' Trump.
Yeah, the only one is Ghislaine Maxwell. The only person who's in more pictures with Epstein is Ghislaine Maxwell, for crying out loud. Yeah. And Trump's in an equal number of pictures with her. And I've loosely heard the idea that Melania was actually introduced to him by Ghislaine Maxwell and through that like modeling service dude they were friends with, is like who they would bring in like 15 to 17-year-old girls on modeling contracts to the United States, basically from like Eastern European countries, these gorgeous girls, but they would bring them in underage with like the chaperones would be assigned to them by the guy who owned the modeling agency. And like, screw that. Like, just there's no fucking way I would let a kid of mine like stay overseas when they're 15 years old for an organization run like that, surrounded by those people. Like, I'm sorry, who's involved? Oh, that guy's actually in jail right now, but he can let himself out on, he only has to show up on the weekends. They gave him a key to the jail, and that guy's friends with the guy that's going to be chaperoning my kid. For what the fuck? That part of it just drives me nuts. Like the history of it. Just yeah. So this last bit, like as you were saying, it was like 1,160 or something in the last 24 hours. There was like, one of the things I looked at on Saturday, we had like 800 plus people who were like Russians who were killed from the night before on a Friday. Like just, it was Saturday morning, for crying out loud. And since, and that number of people, we've been talking about like the death toll in Gaza, which is horrible and, is tragic whenever it's a civilian, I would like to say for the record. When it's a Hamas fighter, I don't know, you buy your ticket, you take the ride. I don't know what the hell, I don't know why anybody, for some reason, and this drives me crazy too, Democracy Now!, and I love Amy Goodman and I can't shake her, but to them, no one who has been killed, even if they were holding a rocket launcher and firing it at, across into Israel, or were one of the people on October 7th who attacked, is still a civilian. It's just weird. Like that part I don't get. It's like buying into the little green men thing that the Russians did in 2014. Like these are not soldiers. They are just upset Russians coming to help their brethren. Like, really, dude?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, well, I will tell you, I mean, at the end of the day, Russia is losing a battalion.
Yeah.
Every single day. Between 800 and 1,100 people, that's a battalion. And also all the equipment. What broke Russia's back during Afghanistan was our support of the Mujahideen that we provided with Stinger missiles that started shooting helicopters out of the sky. And, in the end, that was what we contributed the Russian loss to, was that they couldn't keep up with the loss of helicopters. And they've lost more helicopters in Ukraine than they lost in Afghanistan. And they've even lost more jet fighters than they've lost helicopters. I don't know if you heard this, but it was like 4 or 5 days ago, they had a hangar and the Russians failed to shut the hangar door. So Ukraine sent a UAV in there and blew up 3 Russian jet fighters. I mean, it's the incompetence, it's the lack. I mean, like I've said this many times before. You know, when they invaded Ukraine, within the first 24 hours, you started to see the tread on their tires start to fall off.
Yes.
And that's because of dry rot, which means that equipment hasn't been moved. It's been parked and is set for could be years. And now they're going to war, so they pull this equipment out, and the tread just rots off. And a lot of their equipment got stolen because they had to abandon it. And then here comes the old Ukrainian guy with his tractor. And good Lord, they've stolen a small army's worth of equipment that Russia has had to abandon.
Absolutely. They have, I mean, the Russians, the irony is they see more of their gear coming the other way. Half the idea that they could be shooting their own deserters when they're turning around and running is because, quite frankly, they see armored carriers that were theirs come in their direction. They're like, I don't know if they're deserters or Ukrainians have taken our gear. So there's there's an argument to be made there. And I remember the beginning, we were talking about this, like if you're gonna, let's say you're a thieving bastard and you're a member of the Russian oligarchy and you are shaving money off the top of what industry you're in, whatever it's oil and gas and all this stuff. Like if regulations say it needs 3 bolts, you can sell one of them. I mean, what's going to happen? 2 of them break? Probably not. And if they do, they kill some dude you can replace fairly easily, right? That shit. So the same true is of their military. And I think the deeper the shelf, like the farther back on the shelf the items you're going to use are, the more you can fuck around with selling off parts of them. If it's rifles and guns, they use those on the streets. They patrol the streets with their own with AK-47s. So those are probably kept fairly fresh. And you don't shoot a lot of people, so they have fewer rounds than they think they need. So they have, if you really should have 2 boxes, I could probably sell the second one. We'll never get to it. And by the time we get to it, I'll bring in another box. But I could sell the second box off the top, right? So they could sell one of the boxes of ammo. And that's why they were short on rounds in the beginning. Then you go into when are we going to drive 1,000 people across something? Yes, we need 6 armored personnel carriers. We don't need 30. So they sell the tires that they're supposed to replace on the other 20 personnel carriers. They sell them on the black market to somebody in Afghanistan who's rolling around fighting and shit, or Pakistan or Iran or somebody else under the table. And then they just let the ones that are on those vehicles just stay there and just fall apart. Because all you got to do is look at them. They look fine. You just spray paint them black and they're fine. I think that's my reason why I think their nukes don't work. Because if you think of anything that has been, that's going to go unused, that they consider to go unused for decades upon decades upon decades, at least especially until recently, the tactical nukes they might have to keep fresh in case the boss wants to fire one off and you take the nuke out of it, but you want to see the rocket work, right? Just to show off. That happens. So that's what, by the way, that's all what's happening in North Korea, for fuck's sake. Like, North Korea is just firing shells. These are garbage cans with fire on the base. They don't have, they tested a nuclear missile. No, they didn't. They tested the missile that would carry the nuke. And the last time they tested the nuke, it cracked the earth underneath their fucking facility. And it's been irradiated ever since. So, whatever. But I think one of the reasons why Russia knows its nuclear system is a bluff is because of those oligarchs selling off technology. And there's some very high level technology that they could sell to other people, namely North Korea, Iran, and others, that's for tracking and for their highest level computer stuff. And they've got redundancies. You just sell the redundancy. Just do it, right? And that's why I think they don't trust them to work.
Well, let me tell you, everything that you're saying is spot on. People have to know that in Russia, the general officers are basically given a budget, and that's their money. They get a big chunk of money, and they're told, okay, this is what you have to do to keep everything running, to do what you got to do. And what the generals have been caught doing is they basically say is, well, then instead of buying the top-notch ammunition, I'll buy cheaper ammunition. And the thing about it is when you're a general officer in Russia, you are a very, very powerful person. Same thing in North Korea. General officers are very, very, very powerful people. And, at the end of the day, you don't challenge these people.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why they get away with what they get away with. And then we see when it finally comes to where it's time to show, let's see what you got. We're watching them fail miserably.
Right.
And all of their problems stem from just this type of stuff. And I tell you, this is a little bit of a picture of what, Russia and North Korea, in terms of their people and their military officers and the power that they have. There's a book called The Voice of the Tailless Animal. And it's a book about a North Korean woman who was 100%. She supported North Korea. That was the way of life. She was a strong North Korean supporter, loved Kim Jong-un, loved Kim Jong-il. And basically, every officer is allocated so much material for their uniforms. So a general officer wanted 2 times 2 material because he wanted to have a jacket made that Kim Jong-il at the time wore. So everybody wants to look like the leader of the country. And if you look at, they only have so many haircuts they're allowed for barbers to give and stuff like that. But this woman basically said, I'm sorry, nobody gets nothing more than what they are allocated. The next thing you know, that general officer had her arrested, and the rest was her living in these gulags and getting weaker and weaker and sicker to the point where they literally put her right on the border of China, which is where they send the worst of the worst just to die. And she was able to cross over, like literally swim across this little stream. And then she was able to make her way to South Korea, and now she gives speeches and stuff.
Yeah.
But real powerful. But that's how they are in these places.
Yeah, I forget who it was. I was watching because I've been in a big NASA hole lately because Summer and I went to Houston, and we went to the Johnson Space Center there and walked around. It's amazing. Just, this is where our technology should be going. This is what we should be focused on as humans is. Because I swear to God, if humans have one purpose amongst all other animals, it will be that one day an asteroid is going to be headed towards the Earth that would be an extinction event where it will destroy all life on Earth, and it will only be humans who will send something up and go doink like that and knock it away. That if all of our bullshit for millennia, we could totally redeem ourselves in one moment. That was all we're there for, because every animal dies unless we're there to go dink to that one asteroid. That's it.
And NASA and Bruce Willis is on his way out, folks.
Yeah, right. Yeah, he's not going to be there to help in that regard. But I will say, I think it's crucial for anyways, I was watching one of the astronauts talk about how it was, our NASA program in the beginning was part of it was part of the Cold War. It was us fighting the Cold War. It was us and the Soviets fighting back and forth to see who would go there. Now, all this talk about us faking our moon landing, I would argue, started in Russia and is largely about faking a lot of what they did, because it turns out after 91, we found out that a lot of the successes they had in the mid 60s were actually bullshit. They didn't actually they had some successes, certainly, and they had brave astronauts who were trying very hard, and they eventually developed stuff, mostly in coordination with us after things normalized. But a lot of their stuff was fake. And so they put this idea out that we faked everything. But the astronaut was saying, and he goes, there were 3 big battles in the Cold War at that time. And he goes, Vietnam was a loss, Korea was a tie, and the space race was a win. And that was the one area where we won. And it was a peacetime endeavor, which is also great. That we were more focused on peacetime endeavors and trying to be successful in those things. We really went all in on that shit, rather than all in on Vietnam or something like that. That's the key. And it was a great point. But it made me think too about the Korea as a tie idea. Right? And I was like, there are a bunch of people who, I've been, I like Chinese culture, but I've never been a fan of the government, and certainly not their methodology since Mao and any of that stuff, or even the Soviet Union stuff. And I think like my left-leaning friends who somehow applaud communism at any point, often we'll look at China and what it's done since its opening as examples of how communism does work, when in reality, that was when they opened to the West and everybody else, and it's much more an indication of them absorbing capitalism that solved a lot of those problems. You want to see a pure, unexpurgated version of communism, though? North fucking Korea. And I don't know anybody who wants people in Seoul, South Korea to be living like the North Koreans.
No.
And yeah.
No.
And you have in that system, you have a pure dictatorship and a pure form of communism, both of them running at the same time, which is exactly, by the way, what the oligarchical class want. They don't want communism, like we all live and work together, but communism as an idea run by a group of people who are assigned the ability to control everything else, a central command. And there are two versions of that. One is the illusion of caring about the people communism version, which is what I think the USSR was run on and what a lot of times CCP runs on. And then there's the reality of it, which is what Donald Trump and all these assholes want, which is basically a dictatorship. They basically want fascist committee control over everything. That's right, Mark Kramer. They just want it. I'll pick the people who are around me and we'll run shit because you dumbasses don't know what you're doing. You'll pick all the wrong things and we'll have to, I don't want to have to listen to you every fucking 2 or 4 years is the issue. And that's what, that's what Russia is pushing for Ukraine. That's what they want for Ukraine. They want to exercise that in there. And the interesting thing is, while it fails at home, that's the amazing part, because it doesn't work. It does not work. So
maybe the thing is, well, it's not working here, but it'll have to work someplace else. And
right.
While they try so hard, but I mean, good Lord.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
I don't see at any point, honestly, I don't see them succeeding even, and never mind outside of, I guess in taking what's going on in Russia, running it in Ukraine. I don't see that happening because I feel like the Ukrainians are going to fight forever to get out of that, as Phil will say, and I completely agree. And then certainly the Western Europe's not going to do it. And if they did, the economic system on which Russia and China and these other countries rely will collapse and therefore go with them, right? So they don't really,
I think that the end of North Korea is going to be the end of China. I think China will probably go first, and then North Korea will follow. The reason why North Korea even exists to this day is China does not want Americans on their border, and that's what that is about.
Right.
I mean, it's a tough life for those people. And like I said, I lived in South Korea for a year, and I mean, it's absolutely amazing. South Korea is one of the fastest growing economies on the planet. And then I also have to think about Vietnam. We went to Vietnam because we wanted to, the domino effect was going to turn all these people into communist countries. And the truth is that Vietnam right now today is a wonderful place, has a great economy, for the most part. And I mean, it didn't turn out to be, I mean, it's a very solid country with a decent economy, and it's I mean, it's a place that amazing. I mean, my goal is in the next few years, I'm going to Vietnam just to go down there and spend a couple of weeks.
Sure. It's fascinating to me how, and somebody in our chat room, I think we have a couple of trolls, and I hope so. I appreciate you guys. I want to say thank you to the trolls that are out there, because we need you. If it wasn't for you, we wouldn't get our message out into the other parts of the internet. It would just be a cul-de-sac. We'd be preaching to the choir. But thanks for putting us into your also watched feed on YouTube. And in doing that, though, I find it fascinating myself that there are people who go like, somebody in there was like, our government sucks. I'm like, no, it doesn't.
Really?
No, it really doesn't. And if it does, it's indicative of the human beings that are in the country. At the very least, if our government sucks, it's because our public sucks, because we suck. And if you want to take that on and say that's your criticism of humans, that's fine. But at least if there's something wrong that's off or whatever, we can, not only are we responsible for it, but we can fix it.
Look, we're not perfect. We're not perfect by a long shot. But I will tell you this: how many countries have a welfare system? How many countries have things set up
China
to
doesn't.
make sure that people, when they get older, can die with dignity? How many countries does these things? Because I'm gonna tell you right now, very few. Now, make no mistake about it. There's a lot of things that we could do much better. But when you want to scream that we have a horrible government, do tell. Because, and oh, by the way, and if your answer is, well, ever since Obama's killing it. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Ever since Biden, Biden is killing it. We're breaking records, stock market breaking records, 14 million jobs. I mean,
wage growth.
He's killing it. I mean,
here's one of the
CHIPS Act, PACT Act, everything.
One of the biggest reasons for inflation as people experience, and again, there's a difference between monetary inflation, which is too much money in circulation, so people raise prices to grab up more money. The value of your money goes down, and the number of units of money that you have to dole out for shit goes up. But it doesn't actually change the exchange part of it, as long as the wages keep up, and that's usually what has to happen. That's what the 2% balancing act is always about. The reason we have some of the persistent inflation that we have, and it's not technically inflation, it's a supply and demand issue, is because we have removed, in large part, slave labor from a good portion of goods in the United States, and we are shortening the supply chains and, quote unquote, bringing back jobs to America. One of the reasons why you enjoyed cheap goods for a long time is because they were made in places where there are no protections for workers, where people are around toxic substances, where people are literally enslaved. The fucking Uyghurs, bless their hearts, are enslaved to pick cotton. You would think that would be a particularly sensitive issue in the United States that would draw some attention. You might want to think about that. And then also just the electronics that are assembled because of it. There's a premium you have to pay. I call it the anti-slavery tax. That is part of what things cost right now. And that's not going away. And it shouldn't, if you actually believe in living wages and union quality work and all that stuff. And anybody who says they're pro-union or want people to have a living wage, all those kind of things, who's bitching about inflation or the cost of goods right now, is full of shit. Because I got to tell you, if you actually care about those things, then that's going to translate into the cost of what you actually make. And most of the big stores that people bitch about, Target, Walmart, and all these stuff, have a 2% profit margin. And in that 2%, by the way, includes them, the extra money that they would get from their goods that they would use to build other new stores, open stores in areas that don't have one, and also to pay dividends to their investors so that those people keep investing in it so that they have that money to provide that service at a 2% margin. So, yeah. If you believe that, if you're against slavery, you have to stop talking about certain things coming up in terms of inflation. You do, because it's a cost. It's not. That's how much shit costs when you don't use slaves.
Yeah, and there's no unions in China, by the way.
No,
there's no unions in these places. There's no unions in North Korea. You don't have a seat at the table. That's just the way that it is. You do what you do as you were told. And in places like North Korea, you do as you were told, or they're going to ship your ass off, or you're going to be dead in about 2 months.
Yep. And I have to say, like, I was shocked when I went to China, because I think we all operate on the assumption it's a communist country, and therefore communism at its root is sort of based on social programs, socialism, social security. We make those tenuous attachments, even though they're not the same thing. Social security is not socialism. It's democratic taxation. It's the government takes taxes and we direct where it should go, and where it goes is money to people who need it, who are too old to work, so that they can buy what they need. That's not socialism. It isn't. It never has been, no matter how much Ronald Reagan tried to sell it by them shipping out those fucking LPs that they played at these little tea-clash parties about the march of socialism caused by Medicare and Medicaid. It ain't socialism. It's democratic taxation. We've always had some system like this. Kings had it.
We're the ones who pay it.
Well, yeah, right. We pay for it and we direct where it goes. That's not socialism. So, just for the record. But I expected because I had made those connections or believed those connections in the past, that when I went to China, at the very least, they would have some sort of like universal healthcare system and certainly a permanent retiring system where at least the fucking toilet paper line, something on the level that the Russians had during right USSR, right? Like all of those aspects are like I thought they would be just kind of baseline communism, right?
Yeah.
None of that. There's fucking none. There is no social safety net at all. At all. Like
If it wasn't for the fact that they have, and I will tell you that countries over in that part of the world, the one positive thing is that in most cases they respect their elders to the point where they take care of their elders.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah. And if it wasn't for that, that's the people doing it, not the government.
Exactly.
That's the mentality.
That's a tribal system, not unlike you'd find in almost any country before you have a functioning society. Before you have a modern post-industrial society, that's what you had. You had, it took a village. That's the idea.
Yeah.
You always had, like the town paid for the country doctor who was in, for the area, and he would just see everybody. Right.
Yep.
And that would be part of it. And if you had something special he had to get, you had to pay him directly for it. And then they'd put you on a fucking wagon and send you to the city to see if you could get your shit worked out. But even then it was like, I don't know, whether they pour black powder in the wound and set fire to it. Like at a certain point, you're SOL, right? But and I think this is a crucial difference. We'll also find a lot of people, which is, and I'm not an America love it or leave it kind of a guy. I don't think you have to love it in that regard, and look past our shortcomings of where we're not there yet to appreciate it. I do think that the folks that shit on it nonstop and think it's the source of all evil in the world have a moral obligation to leave then. Because if I was in a country, if I had the feelings, if I was an Iranian citizen, a Chinese citizen, or a Russian citizen, and I had my, if I was a Russian citizen and I saw what they were sending the Wagner Group to do in Somalia on the regular, on purpose, for real, not rogue elements, not a group of them going south, not somebody just disobeying orders and, like the My Lai massacre, things like that, but on the regular, like that's what they're there to do. I would have to morally find a way to leave, to go someplace else, right?
Yeah, I would hope so. I mean, but,
yeah,
that's one of the things is you also ask
many
yourself,
do,
and
and
but you wonder. The question is how anybody stays.
Right.
I mean, it's horrible.
Well, increasingly, it's just the people who can't afford to leave or are afraid to, or they have a relative that's so old that if they leave, something bad will happen to that person because the state will enact revenge. China has that on a lot of people. That's what these like groups that will torture dissidents and the like, or will come over and like Vancouver. I mean, there's a myriad of stories both here and in Canada of the Chinese police departments that they set up. Part of that is just to scare Chinese people who've come to study in the United States or in Canada or have bought property and tried to stay behind, that like if you stick around or you talk shit, we're going to do something to your family back home. And that's the only thing keeping them there. If they and their family can't get a visa, so they can go, hey, I'm just going to bring grandma over for a visit because she's my last nuclear family relative. I just wanted to fly her over and let her see Vancouver once before she dies. And then they get her out and they never go back. And China's gotten wise to this, so they just don't let them have a visa anymore. So if you want to see them, you have to come back.
Yeah, before the fall of Ceausescu in Romania, believe it or not, we had a family member from Bucharest who actually come to the United States of America and spent a couple of weeks with us, my family, in West Virginia. And basically, he was told, I mean, he could come, but he had to leave his family there. I mean, it was tough, and he was told, you've got to return on this date, and it was like, if I don't return on this date, my family's going to pay for that.
Yep. So it's that part of it, like, imagine just taking that for granted. Imagine
Yeah.
that being your norm, because I'm often and I would consider myself fairly well traveled, especially when it comes to China. And I've had back and forth arguments about with this for a long time. When it comes to folks that somehow prefer one form of government over the other, who are holding a hot coffee in their hand from a Starbucks, wrapped in warm clothing, in a relatively well-to-do, I don't know, a building, a hallway, a mall, wherever the discussion happens. That's their norm.
Yeah.
That I don't even people can get used to anything, and I think a lot of people just don't recognize. We talk about privilege a lot over here, and without ever really recognizing what that
Yeah.
is.
They have no concept. No concept
Yeah,
at all. And
yeah,
that's what
their
really
their
sucks.
norm. They live in a yeah. Eileen in our chat says hostage situation is their norm. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Imagine
Yeah.
that being a factor in you traveling someplace. If you like, I'd love to go. I think I'm going to try to go go to the I don't know, the Virgin Islands or something like that with some friends of mine at some point. It seems like a trip or whatever. And you had to make an arrangement with the government that you will come back on a certain date from if you go to Mexico or anything like that. Um, and if you're not, they could harm your family. That's normal. Imagine that being
Yeah.
part of your normal life.
Yeah.
That's
Sad.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
fucking brutal. And
Yeah.
in Russia right now, with them conscripting as many people and the number of friggin' dead that's in there, it's yeah.
Let me tell you, I've traveled. I'm like you. I've
Mm,
traveled all over, and when you're in Europe and you go to countries that used to be behind the Iron Curtain,
hmm
you're going to see things that's going to really shock you. And I will tell you, those are not places that are, the, oh, look here, here's the Eiffel Tower.
right.
But those are some places that have some amazing sights.
hmm
And a lot of those sites are important to catch. Like they all have these like sky towers
hmm
over top of everything. And the reason for that was because they would be up there looking at people because they were always
right.
looking at everything.
Surveilling
Uh,
everyone.
I was in Sofia, Bulgaria, and we
hmm
went into a restaurant, and the restaurant theme was, the Iron Curtain, and it was all of here's the refrigerator, but this was
Yeah.
the refrigerator that everybody had. There was no such thing as anything other than that. That's what the government basically said you can have. And I mean, it was all the way from their children's toys and everything. You could just tell,
Yeah.
this communist feeling about this. And
Right. And it's a
and there was still
resignation
some.
that comes with it. They just kind of
Yeah.
resign themselves to, well, this is the way it is, and I can never do anything about it. And if I bitch about it, and that's the biggest difference, I do think. I think it's where it's. I wouldn't consider myself what's called a free speech absolutist because there are words I don't use because I choose not to, even though I legally could. I think they're awful, so I won't say them, and I don't have any use for them. Also, but that I also think that just the fact that we can complain about our government, we take for granted. We do it so often and so knee jerk and so immediately that we don't even recognize it as a privilege anymore.
Yeah.
We don't even recognize what a gift it is for, one of our chatters in there is like, our government sucks. I'm like, you know what? That's proof it doesn't. That you could say that and nothing's going to happen to you.
Yeah,
Nothing.
and it's that's the naive part of this. You're
Right.
sitting here and you're screaming that our government sucks, but okay, well then give us an idea about where you've been, where you've seen government that absolutely is without a doubt
Right.
spot on the way it needs to be. Because
Yeah.
that's the thing is that you're not, good luck. But
Yeah.
before you sit and scream and throw stones,
hmm
at this country, there's a lot of things.
Right.
We
Well, and
have an
also
all volunteer
my
force.
right. That's right. The military is all volunteer. That is absolutely true. And we've had a draft in the past, and we're not going to have one again because of
Yeah.
how it was reacted to by the public. The public had a say and drew it to an end. That in and of itself is like on like in the history of mankind is an amazing thing. Now, on
Yeah.
top of that, that's where it comes to your responsibility for it. Because on the one hand, it's a privilege, but maintaining that privilege for other people is where where the responsibility comes in. And so voting for people who will preserve that democracy versus voting for people who are trying to eliminate it is a very distinct, it's nowhere near the bullshit idea of lesser of two evils or any of that horseshit.
Does everybody hear that? Is everybody listening what Hal's saying here? Yeah. Listen, please. Go ahead.
Because you have a responsibility to maintain that privilege, that ability to shit talk your government and have a redress of grievances and do something about it without being rounded up and dusted off. That's
and make no mistake about it. Yeah. We will get to that point if we keep going down this path with this Trumpism bullshit.
Right. And that's and that's what they're rooting for. What they're hoping for is, and this is where the whole Russia kind of and China as well. China's been doing a lot of it. That recent dump of stuff from the iSoon drop that came on, I think it was on GitHub. This guy dropped all these files that were used by a hacker group in China that was, originally private and then was, contracted by the government. But then the government, because it's running low on money, didn't pay them, but expected them to keep working. One of them, I guess, they don't know who did it, whether it was a disgruntled person there or somebody who just hacked into it and is acting like they have a problem with the not being paid or any of that, because that could be part of it too. We don't know, so it could be a variety of things. And I'm never naive about the fact that it could have been. I mean, you literally could have had the UK have some hackers because the Chinese hacked some of their hospitals, so they hacked them back and were like, "We'll show you. We'll make this about your internal politics." Like that could absolutely be what's happening. I have no knowledge that that's what it is, but that's my point. That's the idea. But in this, they put out this. One of the things that they had was this strategy paper that they sell, not just to the Chinese government, but that's their main client, to anybody who wants to buy in. An algorithmic hack program that will push the tide of sentiment on Twitter through thousands upon thousands of dead accounts they've accumulated, bot accounts that stack on top of those, and then individuals they have directly working in there that will respond back and forth. And they hit chat rooms like mine, and I'm sure like yours, and anybody on the left and anybody on the right as well. And they don't care about the issue for real. All they care about is making people have disdain for each other within a country and for their government in a way that doesn't make them feel motivated to vote. You'll notice, and this is the tenor that I think is key, is that when you hear these kind of faux arguments, the essence of them is, what's the fucking point? It's all corrupt. There's no point in voting. There's no point in being involved. It's all it's always been this way. It's never been good, and it's never going to be good. So why bother? Anybody, and they try to talk you out of voting. That's the whole point from both sides of the spectrum of ideology, because they don't give a fuck about it actually being solved. They don't give a fuck about whatever point they're arguing. What they give a fuck about is making you go, ugh, it's exhausting. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't even care anymore. This is just, I mean, who do you believe? You can't even believe anybody anymore.
Yeah.
That's the point. And so watch out for that stuff. Practice good information hygiene.
That's the whole thing of you can't trust the government. Oh, okay. But we can't trust it now, but we could trust it under Trump, really?
Yeah, exactly. You think Trump's going to be nicer to the Palestinians? You think Trump would have done airdrops into Gaza? You think Trump would have even forced a negotiation about hostages with Netanyahu if he'd thought it would have bought favor with the right-wing government there? You fucking kidding me? Like, first of all, if you're like anybody in the Michigan people who are writing Uncommitted and stuff, who are like for I guess who are going, I might vote Trump, and then first of all, you were going to vote Trump anyways, and there's racism everywhere, and if you don't think Sunnis think Trump will keep the Shia out and vice versa, that's what that's about. That's those groups of people like, I like the Muslim ban, it keeps those folks out, keeps the other part of my tribe out. That's what they're hoping for. And so I don't know why anybody would be fucking surprised at any of that shit. But the idea that if you are naive enough to think that Trump will somehow be better on this issue, that's just madness. That is just lunacy. Because he worse than doesn't give a shit. Like, there's a cruelty to this idiot. Not only and God, we'll end on this, but and I think Tara will be joining me in a few minutes or whatever. And I want to thank the Major. Check out turnleftpack.org. There's the shirt. There you go. Get yourself some Jackaloon merch and support the idea that we can go into what were previously red districts and turn them purple or blue, because you know, if you really give a shit, if you really care about these issues, you know that the progress, it's never going to happen overnight. It's never going to, incremental progress is the only progress that sticks. It's the only progress that stays. Whether it's a diet and exercise plan, or raising a child, or making sure your aging mother or grandmother takes her meds on time, it is not a one and done. It never has been. It never will be. And that's how democracy is. And anybody who tries to talk you out of it because it's not solved on your time frame isn't for the things they think that you think they're for. They're not. They're not. Yeah. TYT is not for progressive or liberal ideals. They're not. They're an anti-voting organization. That's what they do these days. That's the gig. And I like, it bugs the shit out of me. They should be, but they ain't, because if they diminish your desire to vote for the and start this lesser of two evils shit, that is voter disengagement, and I won't be a part of it. If you care, you vote every time, every fucking time, and you vote in a meaningful way all the time. And
we beat Donald Trump in 2020, and everybody and more more needs to show back up to beat him again in 2024.
That's right, absolutely. We got because it's all about mandate. It is about the Republicans have to be scared to go against Democrats, because it will mean them getting voted out of office. And that means if you're in a district you think is red and you're like, it always goes, what's the point? Why bother? Yeah, they always outvote me anyways. Well, I guarantee there's a good 10% of voters who think like you do. And if you all showed up, suddenly the Republican that was running couldn't. Bless you, Tara, sneezing in the background. I guarantee.
Sorry, Al.
That's okay. I guarantee that a different breed of Republican would have to run to win your district if all the Democratic voters showed up.
Yeah.
They could not run the extremists if all the Democrats showed up and voted for real, for electable Democrats in their area that are tuned to the voters that are in their area. Not this, if I can't everything, nobody gets anything bullshit. Like, for real, get those points on the board and keep them there.
Yeah.
Other than that, I have no opinion. I thank you so much, Major, for jumping in here with me. I appreciate it. My streaming software has frozen up, so I'm going to have to restart it real quick to bring in Tara. So I will let you go, my friend, and I will see you. I'll see you again very, very soon.
Yeah, always a pleasure being on your show, man. Y'all have a good one. Everyone.
Thank you so much.